The Church cares, and so does the St. Raymond Annadas Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. Hi, I'm Anne DeSantis, Executive Director. In 2015, the Mercedarian Friars came together because they wanted to start a foundation to help families in crisis. And that's exactly what we've been doing over these years. Whether it be something to do with divorce, separation, trauma, job loss, loss of a loved one, or other adversities, we've helped so many families get through those tough times through the spiritual works of mercy. We'd love to hear from you. Please do get in touch with us for our services. They are prayer, priestly consultation, podcasts and videos, and programs and events. We look forward to hearing from you. Just go to nonotus.org and get in touch with me. I look forward to hearing from you. God bless.
Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry present Journeys in Faith. Now, here's Anne DeSantis.
Good evening and welcome to Journeys in Faith here on Fiat Ministry Network. This is Anne DeSantis. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I have an amazing guest for you this evening. I have Kathleen Paydo. Kathleen, welcome to Journeys in Faith on Fiat Ministry Network.
Thank you, Anne. It's great to be here.
Great to be here with you too. And I would love to start out with your bio. And admittedly, my eyes are kind of off to the side there as I'm reading it, because there is so much to unpack when I read her bio that I want all of you to be aware of the great things that she's doing. Kathleen Paydo is a foster parent who promotes foster child advocacy in her home and within the community. Through much of her 35-year marriage, Kathleen and her husband, Ron, and their 4 biological children had to open their home to foster children who have no one to care for them and nowhere else to go. Kathleen works to help children heal from abuse and neglect. She educates other parents on the resiliency of these children and strategies to overcome challenges. Each case is different, and she adapts to the ever-changing world of foster care. She's a member of the National Foster Parent Association, a member of Catholic Writers Guild, and a registered nurse through the state of Ohio. She received her education at Kent State University with a bachelor's in nursing. She's the author of Fostering Love, A Glimpse into Foster Care. We're going to talk a lot about that during the second half of our show. Kathleen and Ron currently foster children full-time in Wadsworth, Ohio. And you can connect with her on her website at KathleenPaydo.com. And her networking site is under Kathleen Paydo LLC. So again, thank you so much, Kathleen, for your great work. And admittedly, this is the first time on Journeys in Faith that I have ever interviewed anyone that has to do with foster care, and the combination of your faith, the 2 and 2 together to me is just a beautiful combination, that you're a person who practices her faith and also wants to do such good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So why don't we start out with you and your faith journey and where it took you to where you are now. I'm sure that might take us up until the break, so please do share.
Well, I'll say that my time in foster care, I think the idea came to me when I was very young, about 10 years old. My mom and dad took me to Cleveland to see the play Little Orphan Annie. And I saw how that old Miss Hannigan was so mean to those little girls. And I told my dad when I left that show, I was going to open an orphanage so I could be nice to the children. And then when I graduated from college and got married and looked into it a little bit more, there really were not orphanages around. But of course, foster care has been a great need. And then, of course, our faith is always asking us to take care of the needy. And so that's very important to Ron and myself. We sit in church every week and hear the priest asking us, what are you doing in your community to get out and be firsthand taking care of the less fortunate in our world. And so I can't think of a better way to do it than in your home on a day-to-day basis. And so our journey has come through, the interest in orphanages, through foster care, and then into making it more about our faith and trying to promote the goodness in these children. There's a lot of misconception about the children. Everyone is so difficult, and that's just not the case. And there's also misconceptions about foster parents, that foster parents are mean old grouchy people. And so I work very hard to dispel those myths.
That's important. I'm really glad you brought that up. I do think they are myths, and I've heard that quite often in my years. And I love what you said about how your pastor talks about how can we make a difference for others. And you and your family are doing that firsthand in your home every moment. And you've been doing it for years. So I think it's a beautiful thing. So tell us, what is it like for you, and what has it been like for you on a day-to-day basis in what you do, especially in being that mom to foster kids?
Well, I think we've grown in maturity through the years. We've been doing this for many years, about over a 35-year span. Took about 10 years off in the middle to raise our own children, but we have really been involved with it almost that entire time. And it's been very important to us to help ourselves keep momentum in the program, because statistically, 50% of foster parents quit after either their first year of service or their first child placement. And so we're getting to the point where there's a lot of turnover. And so we need foster parents who are able to stay in the system longer, because children do have difficult issues. And if you're always new to the system and you never have a veteran to lean on, it makes it even more challenging. So I try to challenge current foster parents to stay in it, stick with the program, get a really good support system set up so that you can enjoy your time with the children and stick with it and be a veteran and know what you're doing and not be new for every child who comes into care, because these children need experienced, active parents, not people who are kind of always new to the system and never have, any experience under their belts. So myself and some of my veteran foster parent friends, we work hard to promote younger families and keep them involved in the system.
That's a good way to say it. I love that word veteran, and that it is needed, and people who really don't mind getting their hands dirty in so many ways, meaning the day-to-day of being a parent and being able to love a child. Being able to really love a child is not an easy task for anybody, even if it's your own biological child, right? If you really want to be a good parent, we need to kind of get in there, be proactive, not just reactive. Our kids are not just things that look nice in a picture at Christmas time, right? It's not just that beautiful holiday photo or something to say, oh, don't they have a beautiful family? That beautiful family takes work, doesn't it? It really does.
It absolutely does. Yes. And the children come in with such a need and for them to be advocated for. They have just the neglect is just so severe. So they come in with medical needs, and they come in with emotional needs, and they come in with schooling issues. And so they need people to really get out there and help them get the best care they can through counseling, through medical care, and through good parenting of them.
Yeah, so important. And there's that interaction too, if the foster parents have children themselves, biological children, and it's not just, a lot of times I'm sure it's not just the interaction with mom and dad, it's the interaction with the family, the friends, right? And even sometimes extended family, because they get to meet these people. So they're entering into the lives of a community of faith, and especially for you, I say community of faith because you are a person of faith. And I'm sure that a lot of them are, right? In some way, shape, or form.
That's true. I'm glad you brought that up, because it affects the bio family, both our biological family and also the foster child's biological family. And first, I'll state that I don't think there's a lot of information out there about biological children growing up with foster children as peers in their home. And so that's a big reason why foster parents quit, is they say, well, I wasn't expecting what it was all about. It was hard on my children. I saw behaviors of my own children flare up. And so I feel like people need to be really understanding about that. I write about that quite extensively in my book, and we choose to focus on the positive aspects of that. There are bad days, there's no doubt, and there are times my own children will say, time out, call my social worker, I need some attention. And I know that's time to back up and give my own children some special time. But it does affect your own children, but they also gain a lot from the program. So my children are wonderful caregivers, and they're also very organized in their jobs. They're adults now, but they grew up in an environment of, steady chaos, I guess, controlled chaos, I would say. And they had to learn to prioritize and be organized and be focused. And they also are very, very great at childcare, changing diapers and doing tube feeds and monitoring oxygen levels. I mean, they can do a lot of that. So I try to tell people, think about the positive things that your family is gaining from this also, even though there are stresses for sure. And then the other half of that is the child's biological family. A lot of times we're also working with them. And they are often neglected or were neglected as children. Many of them were foster children. So it's very cyclical, and it goes from generation to generation. And so we are sometimes taking care of their young parents who might be 20 or 22 or 16 for that matter. And then we're taking care of their children with them, and we're mentoring them, helping them to do a better job with their parenting skills.
Wow. It's such an education. And admittedly, me listening to you, I don't know a whole lot about the whole process, just a bit. But I think that what you're doing by being on the show is opening up that door for people to get more educated and, to consider doing it if you're the right person. Now, I'm sure they have to be the right person, right? It is not for everyone. I'm sure you've seen that happen. But
I see the people who
yes.
do the best in this when they have a really good support system. So I would say every foster family needs 5 or 6 really good homes standing behind them who will jump in and help out. I have a family who, this lady will come to my house in the evening and babysit for me if I have to go somewhere with my husband or a dinner or something. And she'll come and she'll take care of the children and bathe them and feed them and, play with them and put them to bed and stay here while I get home. So, I mean, that's just a huge help. It might only be once a month, but that's a giant help for me. And so I don't think that a foster family can do the work alone anymore, especially with the acuity of the children and their behaviors and all of that. You need a lot of support. And so for people who don't want to be a foster parent, I don't think people really realize that alternative caregivers are really needed. There's such a need to have good, strong alternative caregivers who go through minimal paperwork. It's not a big deal to become an alternative caregiver, but you're a safe person to come into that home, or for me to drop my child at your home, maybe for a weekend. And so maybe you don't want to be a full-time foster parent, but maybe you think, well, 2 or 3 times a year, I'd be happy to take a weekend and help out with this family. And so I have 5 or 6 families who do that for me, and I could not do it alone without them.
Wow, I really like that idea. And that is something I personally have never heard about. So that's another thing to explore. Now, before we take our break, can you tell us what are those age constraints too? Because I do know that to be a foster parent, there is kind of like that cutoff, isn't there? Or is there not?
It's a state by state sort of thing, but some states it's 18 and some states it's 21. So mostly 21 and above, but there's really not an age on the other end. I mean, anybody can be a foster parent, active young people, retirees. There are so many retirees in the world who have raised their children, but they're still able-bodied, and they make wonderful foster parents. And they also make great alternative caregivers. And oftentimes those are people in the business world who have made their way in the world, and they maybe have some things to share, like maybe they'll donate batteries or laundry detergent to your foster parent association. So, there are ways to help support the foster care world without necessarily becoming a foster parent.
That's so good to hear. There's a lot more to learn, and we do have to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Kathleen's book too. So stay tuned. We'll be right here on Journeys in Faith here on this Friday evening with Kathleen Paydo. Welcome back to Journeys in Faith here on this Friday evening with my guest, Kathleen Paydo. And as you learned from the first half, is that she has been very heavily involved in a foster parent. She and her husband and her kids have been very involved in it too. And she's very knowledgeable. She has written a book. And so why don't we just start out with, how did you come up with the idea for the book? The book is called Fostering Love, A Glimpse into Foster Care. How did that idea come by you to do this?
Basically, I wanted to write a book and share knowledge, my husband and I. And we didn't want it to be about us and our family and just specifically focused on us. We wanted it to be about the system. We feel that people in the world don't really understand the foster care system well. And there are a lot of positives in the system. We've gained many blessings, so many more blessings we receive than what we give. And you feel good about yourself. It's good for your mental health. There are so many things about foster care that we just hear the negative on TV. And we wanted to portray the positives in the program.
Well, that's very important, because honestly, without good foster care, where would this world be? And as you said, there's a negative connotation, even when I, as an adult, when I hear that someone was in foster care when they were growing up, immediately you say, oh, wow, that's so sad. And it is, because obviously the family in some way wasn't functioning as it should have been at the very beginning. There was something missing, right? But what would have happened if there was no support at all? And
that's right. Yeah. I feel like the job of a foster parent is to be a bridge. So we work very hard to take the children from where they have been at and heal them along the way, strengthen them, help them find some momentum in life, and then get them back to their families. And it depends what county you work in and what state, but at least 50% of the time the children will go home. And I want to feel good about my children going home. I want to know that they are healthier, stronger. They've gotten a lot of supports. We've wrapped them in layers of love. We've gotten them counseling, and we've gotten them good medical care, and we've helped their families understand positive parenting. And we want them to be able to go home, and we want to feel good about that. That 500,000 children running around our country that are in the foster system, many do well, and many go home. I've had a mom say to me, my child having to come to foster care was the best thing that ever happened to our family. We got that old kick in the pants to get moving. We got a job. We got a place to live. We were no longer couch hopping, and our child is better off and our family is better off. So that's the positive side of it. There are times that the children cannot go home. And then we tried very hard to find a good adoptive family through our agency. And we work very hard for said family to get to meet the children and become bonded with them. And typically we even do that before the children know who they are. It's just a family we identify, and we help get the children comfortable with them. And we try to get the family comfortable with the children and their ways, their behaviors, what works best for them, so that they have the best chance at a positive, successful adoption.
I love that word positive, because that's really what you're opting for. And that's the most important thing, that it isn't this, as we talked about, that negative connotation of foster care and even sometimes abuse, unfortunately, we hear about. Exactly. But it sounds like what you're doing is all positive, because you're working you and your husband, and what you're doing with your writing and educating is helping people to see that positive side and to get involved. For those people, maybe even somebody's watching this right now and thinking, you know what, I might be able to do something like this.
And I'm
not that old. Maybe I can do something.
That's right. And we have bad days too. I'm not going to lie. There are some bad days in foster care, but you have to keep in mind that in every job, you have mostly a good job, but maybe you have some bad days here and there. And we have those too. So, but what we try to do is be a good support for others. And I always tell the social workers, if there's a young family struggling, or if there's a child that's that placement is kind of blowing up, call us. Maybe we could take the children for a few days for the family, or at least can talk to the family. We try very hard to kind of triage problems for people that we know. And surprisingly, we get some phone calls from various people in areas that I don't even know the people in. but our name is starting to travel, and we work very, very hard with even our local governments to help them understand that if we can retain our foster parents, that saves county budget money because you're not constantly recruiting and retraining new foster parents. So we work very hard with government officials and our state politicians to help them understand the foster care system a little bit better, all in the hopes of not only saving our counties some money, but also having experienced homes so that our children are well taken care of. And while we act as a bridge until they can get back on their feet, find their momentum in life, they have some God-given talents that we try to really promote and give them a start in life. And then our care doesn't end there. Even when the children leave our home, we keep in contact with many of the children, many of their families. We have teens call us up for advice. We have young adults call us up for, having trouble with adulting 101. And so they'll call us and ask for advice. And my husband's in the business world, so he's able to help them with financial advice and things like that. And so we don't just desert them when they leave our home. When they're with us in our home, they're in our hearts forever.
I like that adulting 101 because you have been a good example to those children that they come back and say, that Kathleen and her husband, let's call them. I love that. And so do you see success stories too? I'm sure you do, right? You see success stories later on, maybe someone that you were a foster parent to many, many years ago. Has that happened as well?
Yes, we had a teen call us. It had to have been 15 years since we had seen or heard from her. And I would tell you that her time with us, I would not say was very successful. I think we had some successful days, but it was a really difficult placement. And she called us out of the blue years later and said, I saw what you and Mr. Ron had at your house, and I wanted that in my life. And I said, well, what specifically did you see that you wanted? She said, well, you had a house to live in, you didn't rent, and you had food in your cupboards, and you had a car that worked, and you could go to the grocery store instead of having to take the public transportation. You could drive to the grocery store and you could get more than 2 bags of groceries. And I just thought some of those things really struck me that, so many young moms have to just go to the market every day or two to get a little bit because they're towing children along with them and they can only carry so much. And she saw how, working, getting an education and being able to then have a job and pay for a house, those sort of things, those were things that stuck in her brain. And so she said that was really important to her. And the other thing was that we went to church every week. And she said, I want you to know I go to church and I'm teaching a Bible study class now. And I just never would have in a million years who that child was 15 years before. I'm so proud of everything she's accomplished.
Wow, that's a great story. It's not always the people we think, is it? And I would say that goes through in life for so many things. I mean, when we look back at our high school experiences or even family, when you look at kids in a family and sometimes like those so-called black sheep wind up kind of coming through, so it's just amazing to hear. I love those kinds of stories that, I think I told you, and that I wrote that book, Love and Care for the Marginalized. And I do believe that is an important role for all of us in whatever capacity we can do. And so I just congratulate you for all your work and writing this book. Now, I know that one of the things you wanted to discuss before the end of the program was the needs that are out there and how there's, did you use I think you said, was there 500,000 children that are in need? So talk about that.
Yeah, there's about 500,000 foster children in our country. And so they need mentors and they need safe places to land. And I have a friend who adopted a 17-and-a-half-year-old child, and she did that so that he would have a place to come to Thanksgiving dinner for the rest of his life. So even though it was late and he was almost an adult, obviously they still need lots of coaching and love and attention well into their 20s to get established and on their feet. And so many foster children age out of the system and then they become homeless and they're trafficked and they get into drugs. And then again, that affects their children, and that's how their children come into care. So whatever we can do, whenever we can stop all of that neglect and abuse along the way with the children, where you just don't know what kind of impact you're having on the generations to come. So that's why I feel like fostering is so important. There are 500,000 children out there who we can positively influence, not only them, but future generations to come.
Thank you so much for that. What would be the initial step? Say somebody's watching the show right now and they're really thinking, you know what, I think I'm being called. What would be the first or second or even third things that they would need to do to kind of get started?
So I would say there are really two types of foster care. There's basic county level foster care, which you would go through your county. You would call your child welfare services in your county. It might be called Job and Family Services. It might be called Children's Service Bureau in your county, and find out about foster care classes. And you take classes, and then you do a home study, which has many steps. And then you get a state license to become a foster parent. There are also private agencies that do a little more specialized care, maybe therapeutic, that's a higher level care, maybe medically fragile, which I highly recommend. Those are the greatest kids. And you have to get a little extra specialized training. I'm a registered nurse, so that goes very easily with my other job title. And you become a foster parent through their agency. So it always is a training process and then a home study process. And then that's when you can be licensed to take a foster child into your home.
Wow, that's really good advice. And obviously your book is going to go through a lot of that too, right? I mean, if you buy the book, you're going to get that education. And again, the book is called Fostering Love, A Glimpse into Foster Care. Where can they purchase the book? What's the best place for them to purchase the book?
It's available everywhere online, Target and Walmart and Amazon, and it's at Barnes and Noble. And so it's making its way around.
Very, very good. And I would also say that if somebody's watching this and you get the book, it helps an author if you give a positive review, like a nice 5-star review. So if you do get that book and you read it and you love it and you recommend it to other people, then give it that nice review, because that helps it to expand and it helps people to find out about it. So
that's the whole goal. My husband Ron and I want to try so hard to help change our world one child at a time. And having children in our home, we specialize in sibling groups. So we've had as many as 6 siblings at a time in our home. And we want to get that word out to more people than just the few people we can affect in our home. So we're trying to get more word out to people about what a good program it is. And it is a way of life. And it's been such a blessing in our life. And we've met some amazing people along the way. So it has been worth it. The journey's been wonderful.
Wow. Well, I think you're doing a great job. I can give you that. Congratulations, and just kind of the encouragement that maybe you need to hear, and that you're on this program. And thank you so much for what you have done so far, and that you want to educate and you want to care about those children, those, as you said, 500,000 children out there that are in need of care. And so I didn't know if you had any final words before we end to our audience.
I think I would like to end with saying that children need to be encouraged to understand that foster care is just a chapter in their life. It's not a title they have to carry with them forever. They don't have to be a victim forever. It can just be a part of who they are. It doesn't have to completely define them. And so I always encourage foster children, find your momentum in life, find some place to serve somebody else also. I highly recommend volunteerism. So I like to even have these children help out wherever they can. They ring the bell for Salvation Army with my husband, or they help out at the local event for passing out school supplies. I mean, just to have them get out and do something too. And that helps them see the world as it's not just me who has difficulties. There are other people. I just feel like kindness goes a long way. We all just need to help each other out.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Thank you for being a guest on Journeys in Faith. We're very honored. It's like I said, it was my first time to to interview anyone who has been involved in what you do specifically. So thank you again.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
God bless everyone. And we will see you here next week on Journeys in Faith with Anne DeSantis on Fiat Ministry Network.
Journeys of Faith is a production of Fiat Ministry Network and Patchwork Heart Ministry. For more information about Journeys of Faith, email info@fiatministrynetwork.tv. And be sure to friend, follow, and like us on social media. Just search Journeys in Faith with Anne DeSantis.